This week's parsha, Parshas Va'era, details the plagues brought upon the Egyptians due to Pharaoh's refusal to allow the Jews to go to the desert and worship God. Many of the Makos have a similar storyline. Moshe appears before Pharaoh, warns him about the upcoming plague. Pharaoh ignores the warning, the plague comes, and eventually Pharaoh gets sick of it. He calls Moshe, says, Moshe, take the plague away, I'll let you do what you want. Moshe says, okay. The plague stops, and of course, Pharaoh changes his mind. There's a particularly interesting repartee between Moshe and Pharaoh after the fourth plague, the plague of the wild animals. As is his wont, Pharaoh calls Moshe to stop the plague and says, listen, I understand that you want to have a revivalist meeting, you want to have some sort of spiritual ritual. I understand that. But why bother going to the desert? Why don't you just do it here in Egypt? Moshe says, you know what? We really can't do it that way. Why not? It's not the right thing to do. Because we're going to sacrifice sheep to our God, and the sheep are the gods of the Egyptians. Can we actually sacrifice the God of the Egyptians to our God right here in Egypt? Won't they stone us? Instead, we need to go out to the desert, and that's where we're going to worship God. And Pharaoh says, you know what? That's a good point. Okay, but do me a favor. Don't go too far. You want to go in the desert? That's fine, but stick close by. Moshe says, okay. The plague stops, and of course, Pharaoh changes his mind. The Meshech Chachma adds another layer onto what the Egyptians wouldn't like. He says that the non-Jews bring karbanos ola. They bring sacrifices in which the animal as a whole is brought to God. However, what Moshe wants to do, what Hashem will demand of Bnei Israel, is not only to bring karbanos ola, but to also bring karbanos shlamim. In a karban shlamim, part of the animal is in fact sacrificed to God. However, part of the animal is eaten by the person who brings the sacrifice. This is something that the Egyptians would not have tolerated. The fact that the Jews are not only bringing the animal to God, bringing the sheep to God, but also eating from the sheep of God. However, only a few makos later, this in fact happens. As we know, the Jews bring the Paschal lamb. They bring a sacrifice in which part of the animal is brought to God, and part of it is eaten by them. And the Egyptians seem okay with it. They don't go ahead and stone the Jews. What happened between now and then that allows the Egyptians to tolerate this sort of behavior? I think the answer to this is to note that the plagues are not simply a punishment of the Egyptians. The plagues are a process in which we are trying to educate the Egyptians and the Jews as to the nature of God. God is not only a super being which cannot be approached, an infinite power of whom there's no one, like whom there's no one else. Instead, he's intimate with his people. People can have a personal relationship with God. And this was demonstrated by the Makos. As Makkah after Makkah, as plague after plague comes and affects the Egyptians, but doesn't affect the Jews, the Egyptians begin to understand that an intimate relationship exists between God and the Jewish people, such that when it's finally time to bring the Karban Pesach, when it's time eventually comes to bring the Paschal sacrifice, the Egyptians understand that both God and the Jews can share from the Karban Pesach, can share from the Paschal lamb. Good Shabbos.